Hey, and welcome back to the Me First Mindset podcast, where I am asking what would happen for you if you put yourself first. On the podcast today, you have just me as a solo cast where we are digging into the question of, can you put yourself first and still have a healthy, fulfilled, committed relationship? Because I know this is why you're all here anyways. You have this dichotomy in your life, or this feeling of dissonance of really wanting to be your own person and also really craving deep, committed, fulfilled relationships. Don't we all? And so I'm here to talk with you a little bit through the me first mindset on relationships and the relationship dichotomy so that you have a better idea on why it's so important for me to tell you about how to choose yourself in every moment so that you can become better and stronger and more authentic, so that your relationships can become better and stronger and more authentic. I know you are probably thinking, oh my gosh, that's so scary. If I put myself first, no one's gonna like me, my boyfriend's gonna break up with me, or I'm gonna have some kind of conflict, I'm not gonna be a good employee. What happens in my life if I don't start putting other people first? If I put me first, isn't that selfish? Isn't that rude? Isn't that mean? I can't tolerate that. So let's talk through all of those things so that you have a better idea of what I'm really asking of you when I'm calling you to action on you, on yourself, on your autonomy and your agency, and why that is going to be the biggest, most important decision that you ever make in your life. Okay. Let's just set the stage with some terms. Now, bear with me. I am going to get a little sciencey on you in some ways, but I think you're going to really like it. Let's level set. What is a relationship? So when you talk about relationships, we talk about one or more objects, people, things, and how they react together. So we're going to just boil it down to what you came to hear about, and I am assuming that's going to be you and somebody else. One person and one person. So for this context, we're talking about relationships as two people and what happens between two people. And now let's talk about me first. And what does it mean to have this idea of the me first mindset? For me, it means two things. It means agency and autonomy. And if you're not familiar with those two things, let's talk a little bit more about what agency and autonomy is. Autonomy is essentially the right to self-govern, or the ability to, capacity for, making choices that are in your best interest. And the other one is personal agency. Personal agency is taking responsibility for what happens in your life. So when I have personal agency, I know that I have choices and that everything that I do in life is a choice. Everything that I do is a choice. I either choose myself or I choose somebody else. I choose to put myself first or I choose to put someone else first. And having personal agency means that I know that whatever I choose, whatever that outcome is ultimately my responsibility. So agency. I know that I have the responsibility to make choices in my life, and that the choices that I make in my life will result in outcomes that are also my responsibility. Autonomy. I can choose things in my life that are in my best interest. Now, I know somebody's out there saying, oh my gosh, again, if I am always just working in my own self-interest, then how can I even have a relationship? Well, let me tell you, if your relationship is not supporting your best self-interest, maybe it's not a relationship that's in alignment with who you want to be, and therefore maybe it's not a relationship that you need to be in. So let's go ahead and dig into what makes a relationship and why you need autonomy and agency in order to have a relationship. First of all, we said the equation for a relationship is one person plus one person. Now, if we decide that the relationship is now an additional third thing, we're saying that me as a person and you as a person agree that we both have this as a common interest, where our relationship becomes something that is in my best interest to continue. And when that stops becoming in my best interest to continue, it needs to be reevaluated. Or not that it needs to be completely thrown out, but that it needs to change and need to reevaluate it so that the terms are still win-win. I think that we get so caught up in feeling like relationships have to be win-lose, where somebody else loses if you win. Like if I'm gonna win, that automatically means that somebody else needs to lose in my life. Or if I'm gonna lose, it's the only way for me to have somebody else win, especially when we're in conflict. when we're in conflict, it feels like there has to be a winner and a loser. And I'm just going to tell you that that's not a healthy relationship. That's not security. That's not sustainability. That's conflict. And it can be avoidable if you are able to access your own autonomy and agency and bring that into that third space of building something completely outside of the two people for the benefit of both people. If you are one half of the equation for a relationship, in order for a relationship to be sustainable and healthy, you also have to be sustainable and healthy. So it has to start with you being sustainable and healthy and them being sustainable and healthy in order for you to have a healthy relationship. Okay, let's unwind that a little bit more, because I hear you saying something else. Maybe you said it out loud to yourself or you're thinking it. What is the measure of health of a relationship? We probably should level set on that as well, because I don't think that longevity is a measure of health for a relationship. I think sustainability is, and there's a difference there. If you are only expecting a relationship to be successful if you stay together at all costs, regardless of personal agency, autonomy, intimacy, respect, personal growth, and anything else that contributes to mutual benefit, if your only measure of success is just that you stayed together for a long time, this isn't going to work for you. My measure of success for a relationship is that I was able to continue personal agency, continue personal development, have growth opportunities, feel supported, loved, valued, respected in the time that we had. And those things are more important health measures of a relationship than longevity is. Now, if I do it right, I bring my true, authentic self into the equation, and they bring their true, authentic self into the equation. There's going to be disagreement, but there's going to be less conflict, and there's going to be a lot more conflict resolution strategy that we'll talk about here in a minute. And so there becomes more sustainability. So then you have longer, more sustainable relationships that feel more connected, vulnerable, and intimate. They may not last forever, but the goal is to have personal agency in anything so that you recognize when it's no longer serving you or them, and you do the compassionate thing to exit when it makes sense, or just redefine the relationship, because redefining a relationship is so important, and that does happen in life. In order for you to keep people that you love in your life, you have to let them change, evolve, grow, and expand in their lives, and sometimes it doesn't quite fit what your agreement was in the first place. So redefining your terms of your agreement helps you keep people in your life longer. Relationships might shift a little bit, but you have more sustainability. Let's look at a relational model from the me first mindset. I want to give you a visual of what I'm spelling out here so that you can buy in a little bit more, because my ultimate goal here is to empower you and then support you on choosing your own personal agency and authenticity and autonomy, so that when you are deciding to connect with other people, it's from a place of truth. The only thing that happens when we connect with somebody else in their truth and not ours is self-abandoning behaviors. And that spirals us down into all kinds of things that you've probably heard me talk about in the past, like insecure attachment and codependency and manipulation. Listen, if you are being less than truthful, if you're bringing something that's not really your personal agency or your autonomy into a relationship for the benefit of controlling the outcome, that's manipulation. That is not relational. Being relational means that I trust me, I know me, I like me, I am valuable, and I'm secure on my own, and I bring that into a relationship, and whatever the outcome is, we deal with together. When you start to change yourself to manipulate what you want the outcome to be, I want him to stay. I want him to treat me better. I want him to see my value. So I'm going to do different things, say different things. My behavior changes. My mindset is running a million miles an hour on what can I do? What variables can I change about myself in order to create longevity so that they stay longer in the relationship? That's not relational. That's manipulation. That's why it feels like shit for them and for you, because it's not authentic. And at some point, you're going to burn out on it, and you're going to be real bitter, and you're going to exit. Let's just not do that anymore. That's not relational. Those are not the feelings you want out of a relationship. And the worst thing about that really is that the more time, energy, and effort you spend, I was going to say waste, but spend, because we always can learn something about relationships when we're in them. The more time, energy, and effort you spend with someone that's not a fit because you're trying to fit yourself into what they're looking for, or even because they're not really truthful with who they are, they don't know who they are, the less time you have for people that really do fit with you, that are going to be aligned with you, that will match your resolution strategies and continue to redefine your agreements and create security and trust for sustainability. So let's look at the model together. Let me bring it up on the screen for us and you can see what I'm looking at right now. Okay, so remember, really easy, simple relationship, you and someone else. And so you have these two circles. Here's me, here's somebody else. The overlap is the relationship. So in the overlap in a relationship is where you can be interdependent. So you have independence and then you have interdependence. In the relationship, you create interdependence by two things. One is common interests, and the other one is communication. If you don't have common interests, you won't really have anything to communicate about. And common interests could be as simple as, I run a relationship, you also want a relationship. Okay, there's a common interest. That brings us together. That's what it starts a date. I'm on a dating app, you're on a dating app. Our common interest is, I want a relationship. And that can be enough, right? That's the first common interest. Now, it's great if you have other common interests and you can increase your overlap by having more and more common interests. And then the next thing is communication. You have to have communication. There's two things about communication that make a relationship, not necessarily make them good, but make any relationship. It's the agreement and the feedback. What can we agree on? What are the terms of the relationship? And then the feedback is, how well are we executing on the agreement? So let's talk about those things. We're going to do a little deeper dive here on the relational model, and you can see a little bit about what's happening here. In both of these circles, you'll see what it takes for you to be able to start entering into a relationship with somebody else. This is what it is. Besides autonomy and agency, which we've already talked about, you also have to have self-awareness, self-regulation, self-security, self-disclosure, and of course, a desire for a relationship. Let's talk through those real quickly. Self-awareness, I know who I am. Self-regulation, I can manage and tolerate my own feelings. Self-security, I trust myself. Self-disclosure, I know how to speak my truth with other people. What's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and how to tell my truth in real time. So those are things that you need. You need agency and autonomy. You need self-awareness, self-regulation, self-security, and self-disclosure, along with a desire for a relationship in order for you to overlap on anything with somebody else to create a relationship. Now we have that. Let's say, for example, you are an aware person, you've done some personal work, they are an aware person, they've done some personal work, you both have those things in your circles, and now you have, oh my gosh, a common interest. Let's start to build a relationship from there. If you do not know what your values, your goals, your non-negotiables, your hobbies are, you don't know what you like, what you want, and what you need, you cannot have a relationship with somebody else that's going to be sustainable, because you will not have authenticity or transparency or truth in that first tier of common interests. You don't even know what you like. And as soon as you start to figure it out, you're going to stop matching with that person. The next thing, if you do have that, if you get that part right, then you come to an agreement. So now, can we, with self-awareness, agree with the other person on how to spend time, energy, and effort? This is where we have expectations. And this becomes a relationship when we agree on the set expectations for each other. We cannot have a relationship if we do not know what our expectations are. So you can't have an overlapping relationship if you don't have the self-awareness, autonomy, and agency to be able to clearly communicate your expectations. And the clearer, more consistent, more truthful, and more kind your delivery on your expectations are, the better the health of the relationship will be. Once you're in agreement, then you are able to have feedback on your agreement. How's it going? Is it great? Then you want to make sure that you say more things like affirming words so that your partner knows that this is going really well for you. So affirmations, validation, appreciation goes a long way. This is a part of that clear, consistent, kind, truthful communication. You want to give feedback on the agreement. I think you're doing great. This is feeling really good to me. I really like this. I really appreciate you. And when things are not going so well, you also need the same amount of clear, concise, timely communication in kindness with what needs to change. So there's two things there. There's either a renegotiation, this is no longer working for me, or a accountability point where, hey, we agreed on this and you're not holding your end of the bargain up, so I'd like to revisit our agreement. When those things are held with personal agency and autonomy, a conversation can be had, a disagreement can be had, and some strategy can happen in order for you to self-regulate, come back, add a little bit more to the agreement, and give more feedback, and then create a more lasting agreement. So refine the agreement. And once the agreement gets refined, then and you do that more often, then you can have trust and security in your relationship for sustainability. So you can see that there's this figure 8 around refining the agreement and trust and security. So the more times you refine the agreement, the more times you build trust and security. And when you become in habit with that, with your partner, then it does that infinity figure 8 where it continues to strengthen it. That's the easy part. The hard part is when you have a disagreement. So let's look at this model and we'll add a disagreement into it as well. Okay, it's already more messy, and that's the point. So you got a common interest, you create an agreement, you have some feedback that's difficult. That difficult feedback turns into a disagreement. Here is the difference between people that stay together and people that exit. Neither of those things, by the way, are negatives. Staying together is great. Exiting when it doesn't make any sense is great also. So here in this, when we're still up here in the green, you have a resolution possibility. So the resolution, as you can see, goes out to the individual first. You need to be able to access your personal agency, your autonomy, your ability to self-regulate, to become aware of your own patterns and reasoning, to create safety within yourself, and then to disclose appropriately so that you can come back up to the top, say, yes, I still want a relationship, and I'm going to come back to remembering our common interests and communicating our agreement, coming back in with some more refined feedback so that eventually we can get back to redefining our agreement and then back to trust and security. If that doesn't happen, what happens instead is insecurity. So if you cannot go into your personal space and answer yes to all of those things, you can either say, hey, this is not for me anymore and exit, or you can say, this is not for me anymore, but I'm gonna try and figure it out anyways without having any clear resolution strategy, which creates more conflict and insecurity. So then I'm not able to self-regulate. I'm not able to have discernment on how to speak. And so instead, I am communicating with insecurity, and then that insecurity is going to create conflict. And just like that figure 8 loop creates more security, this one also is cyclical and it will create more conflict. And when we're stuck in here, this is where it starts to feel really bad in a relationship. Nobody's exiting, and also nobody is creating trust and security. People do stay in this for a long time. That's why I don't think that longevity is the measure of health. Because if you're here, if you are feeling anxious and insecure and not heard, and you're not trusting yourself, and you're not trusting your partner, and you're not able to come to agreements on time, energy, and effort so that you can give and receive feedback, then you're going to be stuck here in this conflict. And until you can pop out and ask yourself, does this serve me? Is this in my highest good? Can I continue this? And say no and exit, you're going to be stuck in the conflict. So when should you exit a relationship? Number one is if you can no longer self-regulate, if I can no longer manage and tolerate my feelings in a way that allows me to onboard my own agency and autonomy and have that conversation with my partner where we are in agreement with what we are going to do with our time, energy, and effort. If that can't happen, then it's time for me to say no, to exit. Before we continue this video and wrap up this segment, I wanted to jump back on here and say a few more things about conflict and about relationships and about exiting and being relational beings, because not every time you have conflict is a cause for exiting. All relationships have conflict, and conflict can teach us something. Having that awareness and ability to self-regulate will help you ask yourself the question, is this still serving me? Is this conflict serving me? Am I learning from something? Can I learn from the conflict that I have in my relationships, in the greatest mirror that I have? Can myself and my relationships mirror back struggles that we're still working on together? And can we get to a point eventually, maybe not right away, maybe not the same day, sometimes not even the same week, but can we still get to the same level at some point in our relationship where we repair that, we strengthen our agreement, and we come back to trust and security? If it's consistently a no, that's a different question. I don't want you to think that choosing yourself first always means just when things get uncomfortable, leaving, because you know this as well as I do. Sometimes things that are uncomfortable are in our greatest good. And being in alignment with ourselves means choosing some things that are in our greatest good. Doesn't mean we have to always choose that. I don't have the right answers for you. I'm not trying to sell you on whether you should stay or whether you should leave. I'm trying to sell you on being able to self-resource in your questions, whether that's staying in a relationship, staying in a job, changing any big conversation that you have with yourself, being able to self-regulate in real time so that you have more capacity, energy, space to make those decisions is going to benefit you and your relationships, because we are relational beings. And the whole point of this is to make your relationships stronger. Relationship to yourself first, and then relationships to other people afterwards. The only way we can do that is to have a relationship with self first. Okay, back to the regular scheduled programming. So you can see, bottom line is that you really cannot have a healthy, sustainable relationship with trust and security unless you have autonomy and agency first. There is no possible way that you're going to create enough vulnerability in your relationship to translate into an agreement and an ability for feedback that is needed for secure relationships. Unless you know who you are first, you trust who you are, you like who you are, you can advocate for yourself, and you can create agreements in relationships based off of that only. This is the me first mindset. I hope you're a convert because I really want you to have better relationships. And the more you shy away from who you are and you start bringing in these false versions of yourself into relationships, the worse it's going to feel. That's insecurity, that's anxiety. And the more you shy away from who you are and you stop bringing yourself into relationships at all, that's insecurity, that's avoidance. And so the energy that we're working on here is, I know me, I trust me, I like me, I can advocate for me. And then from that place, I like you, I know you, I trust you, I can allow you to advocate for yourself, I can tolerate that, and we can agree on how that works for us over and over and over and over again in all these points of being able to resolve together. If this was helpful for you, save it, go back to it, listen to it, practice it, look at the model and see how this can be true for you. Work the model. Come back to it. Ask me questions in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about this. Listen to more podcast guests that are talking about how they're doing these types of things, not only in their love relationships, but in their relationships with business, in their relationship with themselves, with their family, and how that's really translating into way better results. Not that we're trying to control the outcome, but we are trying to improve the outcome by improving what we're bringing to the table first. You guys are so worth it. You're worth having a partner that sees the whole you. You're worth knowing yourself enough to bring your whole self into a relationship. And you're worth security and trust and honesty and truth and vulnerability and good feelings that come from having deep, connected, lasting, sustainable relationships. This is my goal for you. This is the me first mindset relational model. And once you figure that out, that it is possible for you, there's just no going back. I cannot wait for you to start working this model in your own relationships. And I'm so excited to hear how this goes for you. Until next time, we'll see you then.